some of these women who take things the system is designed to give them to help them, things like birth control pills, hormonal replacement therapy, SSRIs or antidepressants, it actually doesn't help them. It
Mhm.
actually makes them worse.
In October of 2025, there was a Swedish study of over 2 million women show an increased risk of cancer on oral contraceptive pills. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry cannot deny this. Every single doctor that is writing for oral contraceptive pills should be telling their patients they have an increased risk of breast cancer.
Hi, I'm Dr.jessicapeatross, and on my podcast, Dr. Jess Unfiltered, we uncover the real root cause of most misunderstood symptoms with help from top experts and real patients who've healed themselves.
Welcome back to the Dr. Jess Unfiltered podcast. Today, I am so excited because I have a friend here with me today, Dr. Jenny Flegar. Did I say that right?
It was great.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Perfect. It's a tricky one, guys, but she is a wealth of information. I'm so excited for you guys listening out there. Not only is she a double board certified physician in emergency medicine and integrative medicine, but she has her own podcast, the Integrative Health Podcast. She's also the author of 2 books, and she specializes in women's hormones, bioidentical hormones, root cause medicine, autoimmunity, and metabolic health. All those things are actually tied in together. We're going to learn a lot from Doc Jen today. Thank you, my friend, for being here.
Aw, thank you. So excited to be here in your beautiful home.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. The in-person studio is always great. So, I guess starting out here today, Doc Jen, I want to ask you, why do so many women have normal labs? Everyone will say these are normal labs, but they really feel terrible. It seems like doctors are missing something, especially when it comes to hormones for people.
Oh, absolutely. We hear it all the time, right, from our patients, and they're super frustrated. They go to their primary care doctor, which insurance pays for, which insurance is sick care, not health care. So, I mean, we definitely have to save some money to see doctors that actually want to dig a little deeper because chronic disease, it starts in your 20s and your 30s. So, we really want to get on this early. And these symptoms that people come to us with, right, with this chronic disease, chronic symptoms, chronic illnesses, the regular labs don't catch it or they're not ordering the right test. So many times we just hear they order a TSH for thyroid, just one thing. That's not enough. Many times, I don't know if you've heard this from your patients, they'll go to their doctor and ask for hormone labs, and the doctor will say, no, just no.
All the time.
Yeah, they're like, those don't matter, or we're not going to test those, or you're not old enough to check your hormones. You just have symptoms that will cover up with, whatever medications they want. And a lot of the times it matters what kind of labs we're looking at and digging a little bit deeper. So starting out with hormones, yes, they can be normal if they're not even checked, and we want to look at the right time of the cycle and order some good labs. So estradiol, progesterone, DHEA, pregnenolone. We want to check testosterone, free and total. And to really look at progesterone, we would want to get it 7 days after ovulation or around day 19 to 21. And then that will give us a little picture into their balance of estrogen versus progesterone, how their adrenals are functioning with DHEA, their testosterone, how that's doing. And if we don't check them, it's not going to help anyone. And really getting a nice baseline of serum labs is great. And then we can move on and be more advanced and maybe get some saliva hormone testing, especially if you're on some sort of topical hormone. It's important. And then you probably order a lot of saliva cortisol. And this is like the gold standard is a 4-point saliva cortisol test. So we see what your cortisol is doing all day long. It doesn't just stay stagnant. It moves around during the day, and it gives us really good insight on how your adrenal gland is feeding back to your brain, and then your brain is affecting your hormones. So it's complicated. And I think as doctors, conventional doctors, which we both are, which we both came from, it's not their fault. Like I do stick up for conventional doctors sometimes because I'm like, right? Like,
Yes.
we went into medicine to help people. And when we came, like, we both have a similar story. We came out, bright eyed, bushy tailed from medical school and we had all the pharmaceuticals memorized so we could pass our boards. And then we got out in the real world and we're like, yeah, this doesn't work. We're not actually helping people. We're just band-aiding things. But they just don't know what they don't know. And they're so stressed working 9 to 5, paying off loans that they don't have time to spend like we did furthering our education and learning all these functional tests and learning root cause medicine. So, what people can do when they go to their doctor, they can write down a list of labs from, my website. I have posts or on my Instagram post on what to ask for. And you can ask them. And a lot of the times they'll do it.
Yeah.
They'll be like, well, insurance might not cover this, but, and they'll do it. Or you can just get your own labs. There are so many websites out there where you can just order your own labs and you pay out of pocket, but sometimes it's not even that expensive. So that information is power and insight on your body. So if your labs look normal, but you still feel like crap, just keep digging because you just haven't dug down deep enough to find out what's going on.
You brought up a good point. You said, sometimes you ask doctors for hormones and they, for some reason, they'll oppose doing it. They won't want to do it.
Right.
What happened in your life, in your health journey, in your story that made you look at things through a different lens and really decide, I'm going to do things differently than what my colleagues are doing?
Yeah, well, it took a while, I feel like, to get there. What's interesting is I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis in medical school. And for listeners that might not know what that is, it's an autoimmune condition of the thyroid where the thyroid attacks itself. And it's actually the most common cause of low thyroid function in women because it's an autoimmune disease. Now, I was having period problems, cycle problems, and my mom was concerned and she asked for thyroid labs. And
Huh.
I guess I'll age myself, but I mean, this was in the 90s when I was in high school. And that started the journey. And it was interesting because no one checked my thyroid antibodies. So was so inflamed. If you look pictures of my senior year of high school, my face is just so inflamed because my body was attacking itself. And probably maybe mold, maybe chronic antibiotics, maybe airway issues. I mean, I look back and I'm like, wow, all of this caused it.
Yeah.
And that's what we do is we kind of dig into those root causes. But then I was actually diagnosed with the Hashimoto's when they took out half my thyroid because they
Mm.
thought it was cancer. And this was my first year of medical school. Yeah, I woke up, praise God, wasn't cancer. We were all so grateful for that. And I remember his name was Dr. Steele, or was it Dr. Steeler? One of those. Something with the Steelers, because we're big Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And he was like, good news, it's not cancer. And I was like, great, I can go back to medical school. And he was like, it's Hashimoto's. And I'm like, what's that? He's like, oh, it's just an autoimmune disease. You can't do anything about it.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, and I believe that because I was a first-year medical student. And then I got into community, ER medicine and saw the chronic disease, saw how it
mm.
wasn't working, started reading on my own, so dangerous, and learned about SIBO, candida infections, learned about chronic Lyme, told my husband like I'm taking gluten out of my diet,
Wow.
healed my Hashimoto's. My antibodies have been zero for over 20 years. And then I told my husband I'm going back to do a fellowship in integrative medicine.
So you became your own best doctor. You
Yeah.
really dug into the research. You learned this. No one told you any of this. It was
No.
like your
Mm-mm.
own education.
Yeah, and everyone thought I was very strange. I mean, black sheep. And then, oh my goodness, when the pandemic happened, then really separated me as a black sheep. And I'm
Mm,
proud of that.
for
But
sure.
the thing that people misunderstand, I think, about what we do, functional and integrative medicine doctors, they think we're not evidence-based. And that is far from the truth because we actually spend a lot of time reading, more or so because we allow ourselves that free time to dig in more and help those, deep, hard cases that conventional medicine isn't helping with. Mm.
Absolutely. And for you, I mean, you alchemized that situation. You came up with an endocrine disorder, an
Mm.
autoimmune disorder, and look, now it's your specialization. So you went through it and rescued yourself. So now
Yeah.
you know how to give the best advice to some of your patients for that reason, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, and it's the emotional component too.
yes.
When you go through chronic disease or you're gaslit. I mean, I remember in medical school, I had been reading studies about how T3 can help with the depressive effects of having hypothyroidism and conversion back then. And I remember I was a second year medical student. I printed out the studies because you couldn't really pull them up on your phone. Well, this is really dating. Anyway, but I printed them out and brought them in and, it was a PA in the endocrinology office, and I remember, like, crying, begging for T3, begging for NP thyroid. Yes, and you know what? It was such a game changer because as you know, when you start to go into 3rd and 4th years of medical rotations and clinicals, it is horrible.
Yeah.
It is very stressful. I mean, you see things that you don't wanna see and you never thought you'd see.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, if you know a doctor that has been through traditional medical school, which it's so important to have that base, but give them a hug because their nervous system is dysregulated.
Yes. And probably the endocrine system for that matter, too.
Yeah.
So tell me, how come some of these medicines that the medical system gives to us, things like antidepressants, SSRIs, we call them, or birth control, or HRT. So some of these women who take things the system is designed to give them to help them, things like birth control pills, hormonal replacement therapy, SSRIs or antidepressants, it actually doesn't help them. It
Mm-mm.
actually makes them worse sometimes.
Yeah, it makes them feel crazier.
Yeah, what's happening with all that?
Yeah, we're not going to the root cause. And
Mm.
actually, some of these pharmaceuticals, they're forcing things that shouldn't happen. Instead of like a lock and key, like a bioidentical hormone, it's kind of the wrong key or a crowbar. It's forcing it. And the physiological effects aren't the same as the actual bioidentical medication, which you can call bioidentical medication, but those are usually made in a compounding pharmacy. But let's back up to birth control. So, oral contraceptive therapy or birth control, it is not bioidentical. It's conjugated equine estrogens, and it's from made from equine horse urine.
Yeah.
So, this is what was given to women to use as birth control. And what it's doing is it's shutting down ovulation. And I thought this was cool when I was put on birth control, to regulate my period that was really from my thyroid problem because you can decide when you have your period because
Mhm.
that 4th week is just placebo. It's just sugar pills. You don't
Yep.
really have to take it. And you can just be on continuous hormones and not get your period for a while. And some people do that. But that is not natural. That is not how God designed. Now, it was really interesting in October of 2025, there was a Swedish cohort study of over 2 million women on birth control, and they did show an increased risk of cancer on oral contraceptive pills. It was a little higher on progestin only pills, but this study, I mean, the pharmaceutical industry cannot deny this. They cannot deny, I mean, every single doctor that is writing for oral contraceptive pills should be telling their patients they have an increased risk of breast cancer.
Mhm.
Since this is an unfiltered podcast, if you go on the ACOG, which is the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, they try to I just read like what they said in rebuttal
Oh,
to
boy.
this 2 million, women, over 2 million cohort study that, yes, it can increase breast cancer risk. But, being on birth control can do positive things like decrease ovarian cancer risk. And, they're trying to play that. Yes, but also extended breastfeeding can decrease ovarian cancer and other things. So I it's so frustrating that we're not just using birth control for birth control. And I have patients that come to me and they're on IUDs, they're on birth control, and the first thing I do is try to get them off of those. And most of them do, and then their symptoms resolve and they feel better, and we can start regulating their hormones better. What I think is hard is that doctors are being lied to each other, even, and they'll use progesterone and progestin
Mm.
interchangeably, and that's not correct. Progestins are synthetic
Okay.
hormones, and they do not elicit the same effect to blood vessels or the brain as progesterone does. They do have protection in the endometrial lining, but not in other parts. So they're not used interchangeably. They're dangerous in my opinion, and I think they should just be thrown in the garbage. But
Yeah, now with
yeah.
that study results, for sure. I mean,
Mhm.
basically, IUDs are using this as well, aren't they?
Yes, and that's what's really frustrating is I've had so many patients come to me in perimenopause that, husband maybe doesn't want to get a vasectomy and they're on IUDs and they think they're safe and they're told by their OB-GYNs that they are not systemically absorbed.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and I'm like, "You gotta get that out," and there are you could do the copper IUD, but that has problems too. My husband was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna have a vasectomy," and I'm like, "Okay, and just okay." So
Yeah.
I mean, that is easier. We do have to look at the whole person, and sometimes it is stressful for women in perimenopause where their cycles start to become erratic, there isn't a risk of pregnancy, even if you are tracking your cycle. Your LH surge can change.
Mhm.
You could maybe ovulate twice in 1 month. So that could be a stressor for them. And I've had that talk with patients, and I'm like, okay, you would be more stressed if you had your IUD out or stopped birth control. Let's just manage your detoxifications of your estrogens, make
Yes.
your gut health perfect, and we'll work with you. And this is where it comes to personalized medicine.
Because,
Yeah.
but what you're doing is giving people full informed consent.
Yeah.
You're saying, here's the risk, here's the benefits. And that's part of my problem with conventional medicine is I feel like the patient often isn't given the full informed consent. And once they are, that's their decision about what they want to do with their bodies at that point. I think you would agree, right?
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
feel like these doctors, they don't even know how to give informed consent.
No.
I don't even think they have the conversation. It's crazy. I remember like 5 years ago, I was working in the ER and whenever I'm worked in the ER in the past decade, I always throw in a little integrative medicine, but
Mhm.
this mother is sitting with her daughter, and her daughter is having horrible migraine headaches since going on birth control, and I just talk with them about what actual hormonal birth control is, because she wasn't on it for prevention of pregnancy, she was on it to regulate her period. And I was telling them and they were like, "No one ever told us this. They said it was safe. They said it was fine." And I'm like, "Well, now we have the cancer risk study, but
Mhm.
back then we didn't." And I'm like, all you need to do is do a nice luteal phase progesterone, work on the estrogen dominance, and then she'll be fine and her cycles will start to regulate or get to the root cause of what's causing it. But putting this band-aid on it is just, it's going to it led to them being in the ER. But the amount of lack of, actual informed consent, it's actually like a swear word on social media. Have you
Yes.
tried to like hashtag informed consent and it
No.
like wrecks engagement?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay, that's kinda scary. I'm not surprised to hear you say that, though, but you did kind of, I guess, hint at something a minute ago. You said, you need to get to the root cause.
Mm.
Are you saying that hormones aren't root cause?
No, hormones are a part of the root cause.
Okay.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
for sure. I mean, they all play off of each other. It's kind of beautiful. It's like you can, if you just throw hormones at people, which I mean, they're popping up everywhere. All these online hormone, doc in a box, like get your hormone script. We even take insurance, and people just throw hormones at women, and sometimes just going on symptoms, not even checking labs, which is even scarier. And they're not fixing the root cause, so they don't get better. So I have a really good case example of this of a patient. So a patient came to me and I was like, this is going to be easy. She had been gaining weight, not able to lose it. And she's in perimenopause. And I'm like, oh, she just needs some estrogen detox and luteal phase progesterone. Like, this will be piece of cake. Maybe, continuous glucose monitor, balance her insulin resistance. And I thought it would be easy. So she comes and she's like, "Hey, yeah, I've already tried hormones. I was on a little testosterone they put me on, even without checking her labs." They put her on progesterone. They threw in a little estradiol. I'm like, whoa, 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 that's crazy. And she's like, yeah, but I kept gaining weight and nothing got better. So during the intake, one of our favorite things, mold, it was mold.
Oh,
So she had mold and it was affecting her hormones through a stress response because her body didn't feel safe because it was just fighting off all these mycotoxins all the time. So the follow up with her after we did a mold detox and make sure she wasn't living in mold, she was like, Jen, she's like, Dr. Jen, I feel my cheekbones for the first time in like a decade. Yeah, because she was so puffy from inflammation.
cortisol's a nasty hormone when it's out of the wrong ranges. It really
Yes.
is.
Well, it is, but how many times, like, doesn't it break your heart when you get those females, those women, that they are gaining weight, and they're literally like, I don't eat
And
anything.
they don't.
Yes.
They eat nothing.
Yes. And yeah. And
Yeah.
and people like judge them or look at them, and it's like, no, all of their hormones are out of whack.
That's right. And so that's what drives me crazy when these personal trainers and people online will say it's calories in, calories out. It's absolutely the biggest myth ever. You don't understand how the hormonal cascade works in the body. So, can you explain to people this is kind of, I guess I always say the endocrine system's like a stool with legs, but
Yep.
like how come you're looking at the thyroid hormones and then the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and then the maybe the liver, or how does all that tie in together?
Yes. So the liver, we can start with the liver. So the liver is so toxic, like nowadays. Like our livers are just so toxic. So if you're not actively doing anything to like love on your liver and support it, like maybe, I know someone that makes a really good Tudka product. But and I do love Tutka, but, if you're not supporting your detoxification, well, guess what? Hormone is detoxified through the liver, and that's estrogen. And the gut is also important for estrogen detoxification and getting it out too, but the liver, it's really a problem, especially when women excessively drink.
Oh
I
my
mean,
gosh.
alcohol, the breakdown product from alcohol is a toxin, and your body freaks out and wants to get it out of there. So then estrogen metabolism takes a back seat. And really, the recommendations for women in alcohol have changed. I remember when I was growing up, I remember it was like 1 to 2 drinks
Yeah,
and you're fine, no increased risk.
that's what I remember.
Yes. And then it went to one. And then a couple years ago, it went to zero. Yeah, but it has to do, with
Like,
breast cancer, and, so we just have to be aware of that, and, like, pick your poison, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's community and having a glass of a nice smoked old fashioned, which
yeah.
I enjoy every once in a while, that is important, but if you're binge drinking or drinking every night, then just reevaluate because that could be affecting your hormones and making you more estrogen dominance. Mold, that can not only can certain molds act on the estrogen receptor, but mold in general really clogs up the liver. And our body was meant to detox mold,
Yep.
but not in excessive amounts, not if you're living in mold. So when we have the liver clogged up, that's affecting estrogen. And then when estrogen isn't detoxifying or turning into nasty metabolites, then that's affecting the estrogen and progesterone balance. And then if we have environmental stressors going on, then that's affecting cortisol. And then
Mm.
cortisol and insulin play together too. Yeah, yeah. So a lot of think about someone that is just chronically stressed or traveling a lot, and then they start to get that belly, and then that belly and visceral fat turns into a hormone factory and
Mm.
creating cytokines and inflammation.
Yeah.
So attacking insulin resistance can help cortisol, but also helping cortisol and our sympathetic parasympathetic balance can help insulin. So you
Yeah.
kind of have to look at both. It's just like a seesaw and it's a really gentle balance. And this is why, even though GLP-1s, peptides, are blown out of proportion, being used wrong in some cases, I have seen it, really help people with inflammation, insulin balance, and then they can kind of get things under control. And then all those hormones play nicer because that insulin is not up and down and up and down. And
Oh, that's what's happening, man. That's actually something I was going to touch on with you is peptides. So let's go there.
love peptides.
Okay, so all these people who say GLP-1s, GLP-2s, threes, they're bad for people.
Okay.
Um,
Mhm.
you know, I've seen the same thing. What do you think? Is it the poison is in the dose?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Well, we know pharmaceutical companies, they want you on it for life. They want high doses. So this is why compounding, GLP-1s, GIPs, they're trying to shut that down. We'll see.
Yes,
But
yes.
but really having that low dose is really helpful because we know it also works on inflammation, on the brain. It's not just weight loss. And
Mm.
that's what's frustrating is like something that was made for good is now like we're seeing all these high side effects at really high doses. And, I remember I was at a meeting for the AOA, which is an osteopathic organization. And one of the sweet, like old mentors, who has diabetes in his 70s, his glucose monitor was going off. And I'm like, why are you eating Danishes for breakfast? He's like, well, he's on a GLP-1 and his glucose is better under control. But I'm like, that's the thing. Like, we can't like eat cake and then be on a GLP-1. The goal would be is to actually, and this is what the studies show for getting off of it and keeping weight the same is that if you do lifestyle modification and behavior modification, that's important.
Yes.
So when I put a patient on a GLP-1 and I have been for gosh, 4 to 5 years been using them. So you want to make sure they're lifting weights, they're stimulating that muscle
Mhm.
because the side effect is muscle loss. So
Yes.
then yes, you will have to be addicted to a GLP-1 to stabilize your insulin if you don't have that muscle stabilizer in there
Yeah.
because muscle is metabolically active and when you have glucose it goes into the muscle, so it's a buffer. So if you want to eat more or have a better buffer you lift weights.
Yes.
Yes,
All I heard was you can have your cake, but you can't eat it too. So, pretty much, she'll be
sometimes you can have your cake if you have a lot of muscle.
there you go.
Well, I mean,
That's
seriously.
true.
And with these GLP-1s, so protein, we want to focus on protein and still eat. And this is what's devastating is these people on these high doses, they're just not even eating.
Not till the evening sometimes. They fast all day long, right? Which is not great for the metabolism anyway if you have to come off the
Mm.
GLP-1 ever. So the GLP-1s, keep them in micro doses is what I'm hearing. I've also seen from my patients the great results that they can get from that. Which ones do you like for the endocrine system or hormones? Do you like any other ones?
Yeah, real quick with the GLP-1 though. So one fun thing I've been doing is just having patients on it during their luteal phase.
Oh,
Yes. So I had a patient actually bring it up about like a year ago, and she's like, because I'm like, we're going to start weaning off, go every other week, let's just see, give
mm,
the body a break because I do like to pulse and give breaks for peptides. And she was like, well, I'm just taking it actually during my luteal phase. I'm like, oh, yes, because that's when you're having cravings. You are more insulin resistant because of progesterone.
yeah.
So it helped with the food noise and kept her more consistent with, not binging or not picking bad choices. So some of my patients, I'll just have them support that there because that's when, as women, we go off the rails a little. If our micronutrients aren't good, we'll go off the rails. I mean,
Yes, it's
oh,
true.
yeah. So other peptides for metabolism. So MOTS-C, I love MOTS-C. We actually named a stray cat after that peptide. It's a mitochondrial derived peptide and it activates AMP-K. So it works in the mitochondria at AMP-K. So you would think, okay, so it's just for weight loss. No, I love MOTS-C for just every organ in the body because mitochondria is everywhere. So I've had patients reverse really bad chronic kidney disease with MOTS-C
Wow.
and oh yeah, and with some bioregulators. But if you think about it, the kidney and the heart are so mitochondrial dense. There's actually studies on PubMed about MOTS-C and mitochondrial derived peptides that help with congestive heart failure
Oh, wow.
and
Yeah.
chronic kidney disease.
Yeah.
And we're not using these with our sick patients, but we're using peptides, but it's really when you look at the literature on some of these peptides, it's kind of disgusting that they're not standard of care or being used.
I agree. I've seen miraculous things with some of them with a lot of my clients. So MOTS-C is a good one for hormones. A lot of the GLP-1s, microdoses too. Any other ones that you like?
5-amino-1-MQ is good. So it's another one that can help with some lipolysis and
Mhm.
energy.
Huh.
I like this one like when I travel. I feel like it just gives me a little bit more support to my mitochondria. And that one's oral. So people like that because they're not injecting themselves. So
Yes.
yeah, so that one's helpful. Specifically when we talk about, metabolism, those are my go-tos.
When your patients come to you or people come to you, what are some kind of symptoms or red flags that would be disguised as hormonal, but are actually more inflammatory or metabolic in origin?
Okay. So you think they're hormonal, but it's more inflammatory.
Yeah. Or metabolic, I guess, too. I guess these have crossover.
Yeah, I think they would have crossovers because I feel like people come a lot that they have anxiety
Yeah.
and that is insulin. It could be, they're hypoglycemic, they're going up and down, and we ha- traced it back to metabolism, which is inflammation. I had this one patient that really, really bad debilitating anxiety. And I'm like, why don't you wear a continuous glucose monitor? And it was all her blood sugar
Oh, wow.
bouncing up and down. Yeah, because she was already on progesterone. Like we were working on her gut and it was her blood sugar. And then it went back to trauma.
Oh, wow. You're kidding.
No, yeah. So she had a lot of trauma and that was affecting her blood glucose and that was making her anxiety where it was just like a big circle of, yeah. So we, L-theanine, DHHB helped with that. So it's just there's so many layers and it all kind of goes back. I mean, I've also had the flip side where I've had patients that really bad mold, really bad mast cell, and then we in perimenopause, so that progesterone's declining, gave luteal phase, second half of the cycle progesterone, and it flipped her around. So sometimes for some patients, it's like, is it the chicken or the egg? What do you need to correct first? Because for her, progesterone, I mean, she was on cromulin, which is a medication that helps stabilize mast cells. And it wasn't until we gave that progesterone, because
Mm,
progesterone helps stabilize histamine and mast cells, that turned her around. So it's
yeah.
it's really interesting, and this is why it's so important for us to have so many tools in our toolbox
Yes,
in
it
case we need
is.
it.
Have what is histamine and why do women see it around their cycle? What symptoms would they look for too?
Yes, so red inflamed skin, itchy. Histamine is basically an allergic reaction. So if you've had an allergic reaction, think about that, but annoying and every day. Or you're just more reactive to stuff, like you scrape your arm and it turns red. So just overreactive. Your body is like freaking out. So we want to stabilize mast cells, and then we want because they release histamine, and that histamine is what makes us feel crazy. And there's genetic reasons why we don't metabolize histamine as well, and gut health. And then there's things that can cause increased mast cell activation. The interesting thing is some people will not have a problem or compensate for this for so long. And then they hit perimenopause, they hit midlife, and their estrogen's erratic, and estrogen's going to fire up those mast cells and make that histamine worse. And then their progesterone is declining, and progesterone is what's like stabilizes those mast cells. So all of a sudden they're like, what just happened? And some of them they do get anxiety too as a symptom, poor sleep. So it's so cool how it's all connected, but it can also be super frustrating when you don't know what's going on and no one can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a catch-all of symptoms too. And did I hear you say that like as a estrogen gets erratic or gets higher, histamine is responding to that actually?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. There was a study, they studied about 30 women in perimenopause, and they actually checked saliva estradiol levels, and they were also checking cortisol. And the estradiol fluctuation up and down increased their cortisol. And yeah, and I find that really interesting because usually when we are in our follicular phase and estradiol is pretty steady, we're more resilient to stress. But it's this erratic, it's more erratic during perimenopause. So that's going to influence this whole system and our hypothalamus and how we look at how our hormones are in our cycle. It's supposed to be more steady. So then our histamine is going to be erratic too, and we just feel out of sorts. So it's important when we look at that time of erratic hormone and change that we keep stress low, we keep blood sugar stable,
Yes.
and maybe consider even an herb to help our progesterone kind of perk up a little, like chase tree berry, or we get on some progesterone.
I love chase tree berry. It's such a good herb. It's
Yes,
the
yeah.
best. So you've written now the perimenopause reset, which is such a pretty cover, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I could have used this probably years ago. I would say most women could because I think most of us are start having these symptoms early on and are just kind of left out in the storm to
Yeah.
fend for our own. What do you think most clinicians are missing when they prescribe like hormone replacement therapy or they start to look into menopause? What are they missing?
Yeah. So perimenopause, I think a conventional doctor, so we'll do two layers, like conventional doctor, they literally prescribe a birth control, like a progestin usually. Like I had a friend that I had to know her med list because I took her to the hospital and she's like, yeah, I'm on progesterone. I'm like, you are, but you're still having perimenopause symptoms. So I'm like, what does it look like? And it was a progestin. And I'm like, they lied to you. But anyway, yeah, so that's a whole nother story because I was really upset. But they don't they
They
think
don't
they're
know.
the same.
Yes.
So the cookie cutter recipe for perimenopause is oral contraceptive pills and an antidepressant.
Yes.
And then they're worse and they feel more crazy and they can't detox any of it and you're increasing their cancer risk. So let's not do that if you're a conventional medicine doctor listening out there.
Yeah.
And then, functional medicine, I don't know, it's kinda like a rodeo out there.
Yeah.
Like, it's not very evidence-based, which gives us a bad name. I think we need to rein it in a little bit. We need to make sure we're not doing harm. We need to check labs. If we're putting on topical hormones, we need to check saliva and not serum. I have so many case studies personally about this where patients were on, as a patch, which I don't like the patch personally because you would get mad at this. Guess what's in the patch material that you use it with?
No. What?
A bunch of petroleum.
Yeah, they make petroleum out of everything is made of petroleum in conventional
Yeah.
medicine.
Yeah, because Rockefeller. Go Flexner report. You guys can all look that up
Yeah,
on your own.
that's right. That's right.
But the patch, I'm like, okay, so we're gonna say, show me your patch and do all these campaigns for the pharmaceutical companies. And anyway, I guess I needed to bring a tin hat. But we're gonna put on the estradiol patch, but the mechanism to get that into your skin is filled with petroleum, which is endocrine disrupting. So how does that make sense? But anyway, so I'll get patients that they're on a patch, a high dose, and they keep going higher and higher because the doctor's like, well, your estradiol level is still low because they're checking serum. So yeah, and they're not looking at the tissue level of saliva. So I
So
get
explain that a little bit more for everyone. Yes, and what does that mean exactly?
yeah, so the serum, if we were doing like a blood spot, that would be better. But a
Mm.
serum, it's not gonna catch what is actually binding to the tissue versus tissue level versus saliva or a blood spot. So
Okay.
it sucks because when I get these patients, I'm like, I think you're overdosed on estradiol, and they're like, okay, and I'm like, we're gonna get a saliva level now with you on your current dose, and then we'll adjust. And when I get the saliva, they're super overdosed. Their estradiol is super high, which is what I thought. And then I'm like, you're gonna hate me because all of those cell receptors are all upregulated and I have to bring them down to a safe level so they don't get breast cancer and they don't have unopposed estrogen floating around. And it sucks basically. So
So if they're just getting blood, they're really missing what's being metabolized in through the cells in your body. They're missing part of the picture.
yeah, they're usually overdose. And then we also have where they're on a high dose, topical patch, whatever, and they're not checking the right labs. They're just going by symptoms, which we should look at symptoms always, but their symptoms, the big complaint is hot flashes. They're like hot flashes, hot flashes. So they're like, you need more estradiol, you need more. But the second most common cause of hot flashes is cortisol and stress.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So I'm like, I mean, I can't I think I'd be a millionaire if I just told like, if I got a penny for how many times I've told patients, "We gotta work on your stress and cortisol." And it's not like, "Don't worry about things." It's just building up resilience and getting in that parasympathetic space, which you are an expert in and know how important that is. But if we ignore that and just patch it with hormones, so that's a big mistake there. I've also seen weird things lately with even functional providers putting perimenopausal women who still are cycling normally, but their cycle starts to get a little erratic, but putting them on progesterone daily. Yeah. And
Same.
I'm like, okay, so you're suppressing your ovulation, but you still have eggs low. What's going on? So we dial that back and get them on luteal phase and then see. But I don't know, the hormone world's really exciting because of, RFK Jr. and everything he's doing. Like everyone wants to like have a hormone test and we just have so many choices. I personally just 3 weeks ago started tracking daily urine on myself to look at an estradiol metabolite, progesterone, LH, and FSH.
Yep.
So tracking perimenopause FSH, you could really actually then safely give, estrol and estradiol potentially and suppress that FSH. So this is, I mean, I could just be a nerd about this topic because we haven't had anything that will give us that daily feedback of FSH yet like
So,
this.
so follicular stimulating hormone FSH, it comes from the brain, right? And it
Mhm.
tells our ovaries to make estrogen, right?
Yeah, so it's gonna stimulate that follicle more. So we are getting estrogen and then we get a little bump and then it kind of evens out during that luteal phase. So the FSH is more stimulating the follicle and then that turns into the corpus luteum and then we
Mm,
get our progesterone. So
okay.
the thing with FSH is yes, its feedback is from estradiol. So with estradiol, when we go into menopause and late perimenopause, that FSH starts to go high
Mm,
because the body is like, knock, knock, where's an egg? And the ovaries are like, there's no egg. So the brain is like follicle stimulating hormone. Come on, I need you. I need some follicles. Like, let's go. So that's why FSH climbs because there's not that feedback. And then estradiol can keep FSH low. So the reason why we care about FSH in late perimenopause is because we start to get concerned about bone health. So, yeah, so if we have a really high FSH, that can affect bone health. And this is why with the Flawed Women's Health Initiative, but this is why we look at estrogen and estradiol for bone protection and heart protection. Because honestly, we talk a lot about breast cancer with hormones, but what really kills women is heart disease. And yeah, if you look at all of the heart organizations out there, they are not talking about estradiol, and they're really missing the mark for protecting women and, our longevity. So, hormones are definitely a part of longevity medicine, and especially for women, like, so important, but it's a very delicate balance.
yeah, and there's a lot of different opinions. I feel like people are
Yeah.
heavily opinionated within the space. So it's sort of like FSH is sort of comes to the brain just like TSH, right? And it
Mhm.
tells the TSH tells the thyroid to make thyroid hormones. FSH tells the ovaries to release an egg and a
Follicle.
follicle if it can. Okay, so and then LH does the same thing for progesterone. So there's big feedback loops,
Big
right?
feedback loops. Yeah,
Okay.
and stress can really hurt that. So
Hmm.
when we look into anovulatory cycles from gonadotropin hormone or stimulating hormone, releasing hormone, gonadotropin release stimulating hormone. So cortisol can really shut down that.
Hmm.
And this is supposed to be a pulse because all our hormones for women, they pulse. And when cortisol comes in or stress, chronic stress, which chronic stress can be from a chronic disease and a stealth infection too, so when we have that, that messes up the feedback loop. So this can happen if you're skipping periods or don't have a period, are you ovulating? So this is why sometimes, I ask my patients, well, are you still ovulating? Are you even ovulating or is that shut down? And this is why, talking about the continuous progesterone, how that can kind of be a little weird if they're still having a semi-normal cycle.
Yeah.
But late perimenopause, sometimes I do go to that constant progesterone when they're maybe a year or two away from menopause. But what's crazy is we're all different. You know, I talk about like it's like an oven, right? Like preheating an oven. If I used your oven here, it would be different from preheating my oven at home versus my parent. Like we all preheat for menopause differently. So it's not like a cookie cutter approach.
Right.
Like that's why I think some of this new technology coming out where we can really look at real-time hormones for women, it's so exciting because we deserve this. Like we deserve to know what our body is doing day in and day out.
Absolutely. Okay. So, for people who may be struggling with, hormones or their endocrine
Mhm.
system in general, what advice would you give them as far as working out goes?
Oh, yes. I love this topic. I'm glad you asked. So I would tell them to sync their workouts to their cycle. So
Oh,
I talk about it in my book, and there's actually a lot of scientific data about this. Now we have the two phases mainly that we can talk about: follicular, which is the first half of the cycle. Estrogen is more the star of the show, more dominant. And then luteal phase, where progesterone is. Okay. So throughout your cycle, lift weights because we need to lift weights as women. I
yes.
mean, you really started hitting the weights a couple of years ago hard, right?
I've always lifted weights, but I did have a period of time where I just went back to hot yoga and
Mhm.
didn't lift. And it wasn't, I have to say, it wasn't the best decision.
Okay, yeah. So you gotta do the muscle. Yeah.
I do both now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Definitely both.
I lift pretty heavy and it's like, it's just nice. Like you're gonna feel better and you're not gonna look like a man unless you're taking testosterone.
Right. Thank
And
you for saying that.
And there are a lot of influencers in the wellness space, women that take testosterone, like let's like maybe too high, and then they
Nope.
start to look manly. So you're not gonna look like that. You're gonna go to a doctor that's not gonna overdose you on testosterone, and you're not gonna turn it. You're not gonna look manly. So tell your husbands it's fine. I mean, because we can't like we're not designed like that. So the follicular phase, the first half, this is where we are more resilient to stress. So we are gonna, if you want to do your hit workouts or go to, get splat points. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. Yes. Then you want to do it during that first half of the cycle. But this is so great because we, as women, we want to do sprints. We need to keep doing sprints. We need to make sure our VO2 max, which is a great marker of cardiovascular health, we want to make sure we have that be high and good because that is a marker of longevity. So I do my sprints. I love my sprint workouts during that follicular phase and you feel better. Like
Yeah.
you feel better during that phase. You're gonna want to give yourself a couple days like after bleeding and then get into it and go after the PR, lift really heavy. The
Interesting.
Yes, yes. Now I'll tell you, I'll get to why too. So the stress component, but there's another component. It's injury risk. So our luteal phase, we are more likely to get injured.
Huh.
Yeah, they did a really cool study on a team of football players, really well soccer, but football players because it was Barclays. Yeah, it was a team over there in England and they studied these women, menstruating women of their different cycles and they found out that they had more muscle and tendon injury during the luteal phase of their cycle,
Hmm.
specifically the later luteal phase. Yeah. So pretty cool. And this has to do with joint laxity. We're just more kind of clumsy during that second half. Yeah. And then they also did another study on competitive like adolescent girls, so probably like travel sports. And same thing, they had more muscle injury, like significantly different in that second half or the luteal phase. But that study was cool because they also, like, put in their contusions and fractures, and they were even for both parts of the cycle. So this means it's not just chance, it's not just
Uh,
yeah. So
huh.
really cool studies, so more likely to get injured. So think about it, like, in your luteal phase, like, your body is preparing to home that little embryo if it got fertilized in the nice fluffy endometrium. And that's how you feel. You just want to like get in your flannel PJs and sit in bed. Or is it just me? I just want to be like, let's do a movie night, kids, and have popcorn. I'm luteal phase. I mean, but your workouts, you're not like, I'm going in the gym to crush it and luteal phase. And you're like, yeah, so don't do it because your body is smart and you should listen to it because you could get hurt. And I've done this like a few stupid times. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm still gonna lift heavy during my luteal phase because I'm feeling good. And then I'm like tweak my back, like doing a deadlift, I'm like, listen to read your own book. No, but I'm like, so listen to your body, but still lift weights. So what you can do, lower weights, more reps, still go to fatigue, but you're not going to get injured. And then put on that weighted vest and go for a walk or do mobility. So this is when you do it. And it's interesting because when you know you're working with your hormones and it's your physiology, you're not going to feel as guilty. You're not going to be like, oh, like, I didn't crush it at the gym, and you're like, "No, at least you went to the gym." So, yeah, so working out is very interesting, and I have a patient that, she didn't tell me she was gonna do this, in perimenopause, midlife, trained for a marathon, and she scheduled an appointment afterwards, and she's like, "I was 20 pounds heavier crossing that finish line." And yeah, so we got labs, and I'm like, well, I think cortisol like trashed, you just trashed your hormones because you're in perimenopause. And not that this happens to everyone, but I see it a lot. But it was so interesting. So her testosterone and progesterone were off, and we checked them day 19 to 21 of her cycle. Her testosterone went down to point 0.2. Her progesterone was like around a 6, I think, 6.3, I think. So we actually she didn't wanna go on progesterone, so we did chase tree berry, we did adaptogens, we implemented cycle syncing, we had her rest. She's a busy mama, like, so she just really had to give herself rest, rechecked labs, testosterone went back up to 1.2. Yeah, and her progesterone went up to 13.
Almost double. It doubled.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, and back
crazy.
to normal.
Yeah.
So our body craves to be at homeostasis and really wants to, but we fight that all the time, even with exercise.
Even with exercise, we always are hard on ourselves, I feel like, which is part of the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. If you were going to tell women out here that wanted to fix their hormones, that want to do it themselves, what's the biggest mistake you see women do?
Who I would say like just pushing harder through things. So I'll use an example like carnivore diet, for example, or keto, that they're like, I'm gonna go on this to fix my hormones. And yeah, if you're 20 and you go on carnivore diet, you could probably sustain that for a couple of years, and not have like cortisol issues. But if if you're doing this when you're trying to fix your hormones, which means there's already a problem, that might be too much stress on your system to do past a couple months. And this is what we see. And there's a reason for that. It's hormones. And so I also have people cycle sync their diet.
Yeah.
So I'll have them do more keto, carnivore, low carb during that follicular phase. You're more stress resistant. Your body is actually more metabolically flexible. You're more insulin sensitive here. So you do your long fasts here. And then that luteal phase, your body actually craves more calories and needs more to sustain that and for the progesterone and for the corpus luteum. So go with it, have more carbs and,
Mhm.
don't do the fasting. And once again, it goes back to like guilt too. Like
Mhm.
these women are told, like in some of these communities, because I have friends that are deep into those communities, and they're like, you're told just to push harder, to do the lion diet, to go to OMAD, to just keep pushing. And then you're having that horrible feedback loop on your hypothalamus from cortisol, and it's affecting your hormones. Maybe you're not even ovulating anymore. And then because you're increasing cortisol, you're increasing weight or you're stuck. So, this is where we also hear that sometimes you need to eat more calories to lose weight. And this goes with your cycle. So, I think it's great like, luteal phase you already want to just be cozy at home, make some popcorn with butter on it and then like and eat a lot, nourish your body, focus on protein and healthy fats. And then when you're in the follicular phase, you can throw in a 24, 36-hour fast. You can go back to intermittent fasting and you're not going to be miserable because your body is primed for that. It feels good. And we can see this with continuous glucose monitor data too. It's good to always, look at your own data. So I always recommend to explore your own data, get a continuous glucose monitor and see how the food's affecting your body. And I tell women, wear it a whole cycle. So continuous glucose monitors, like, don't just wear it just one time 2 weeks, do it over a whole cycle.
Yep.
Men can just wear it 2 weeks. They're easy.
Easy.
Men are easier.
Okay, I have to ask now because you said that about fasting and about working out.
Yeah.
Cold plunging.
Yes. So I would say similar. I would say so when we talk about hormesis or things that or hormetic stress on the body, so this is a good stress on the body. So fasting, cold plunging, sauna, those are all good. But what are you in a state of like distress? Are you flared up? Do you have like an acute issue going on? And I call that like crisis mode for my patients. Are you having a health crisis right now? So I'll use myself for an example. I cold plunged for a long time and loved it. And I felt like I had so much good, like brown fat thermogenesis going on. And it was so good for me. And then we were moving, we decided we were going to move. And I had the cold plunge. I would do it like almost every day. Um, and it was out on our patio, and we moved to Tennessee last February, and I haven't really cold plunged since, like maybe just like once for fun in a lake. But I finally now, I even told my husband, I'm like, can you help me set up the cold plunge again? Because I feel fine now. Because moving really, I mean, my period got off for 2 months, even though I'm pretty dialed in on stuff. I mean, moving is a big stressor. Moving and divorce are like the two biggest stressors you can do in your life. So I gave my body that rest. So similar to someone in a health crisis, would I be cold plunging? No, I would just like settle down a little bit. So and I brought up sauna. Sauna is actually, you're going to detoxify and that's going to be good. So you always have to weigh the risk and benefits with anything we do like hermetically. But I mean, you could cycle cold plunging, cycle that, sync it with your cycle. Just do that during the follicular
That's a
phase.
good idea.
Yeah, I haven't seen any research on that, but it would be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. That's actually a good study that we should plan out.
Yeah.
Good. Yes, I like that a lot. So, what's your favorite hormone testing? I've heard you talk about blood. I've heard you talk about saliva. Do you have some favorite testing companies that you like to use?
Yes, I feel like they're all getting in on the saliva cortisol game. Yeah, ZRT was kind of the OG for even the urine metabolite technology. So they're great. I know Genova is coming out with a new saliva. I just got an email today. Vibrant Wellness has urine metabolites. Pretty cool. I just saw one from a patient. They also include toxins which can affect our hormones. So they look at atrazine and different things. So a lot of great companies out there. And really like some of these you can just order on your own. Patients will come to me with the tests already. But what you want to understand is you do want a doctor with experience to help you interpret it and apply it to you in your life because it's all about just stalt when it comes to these difficult cases. Like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll just be listening to the patient and I'm like, I know the exact question to ask, and because we have seen so many cases and have so much experience. So, um I think when it comes to hormones and functional and integrative medicine, like everyone's getting into it right now, but maybe not everyone had the proper training,
They're hard
which
tests to
is
read.
scary. Yeah.
It's hard tests to read.
Mhm.
This is why like conventional doctors don't do them.
Yes.
So, do you like the Dutch test and hormone zoomer? Those are your urine metabolites. You like those, okay?
Yes, so um I'm not gonna dose off of urine metabolites.
Okay.
Okay.
Huh.
So that could be like a slippery slope. So that's why I dose more off saliva and it's just going to be, or you could do blood spots. Some people are doing that now. Now urine metabolites though are so important to look at how you're metabolizing and getting rid of toxins because we can build up estrogen and then we have an imbalance, and it's the 2 hydroxy pathway, 4 hydroxy pathway, and 16, and how you can remember that. So 2 is the good pathway, we want that. Okay. 4, I was trying to like make up an analogy for golf. So 2 would be like if you're 2 under, it's an eagle. So think of like
Mm.
that is the great. And then 4 is like 4, you're hitting it off, right? Like Happy Gilmore when he drinks too much. And then 16 is still yucky. But what we want to do is focus on the positive, the 2-hydroxymethylation pathway, and that would be like I3C dim, calcium D-glucarate, focusing on methylation. So eating broccoli sprouts. So we want to push things down that pathway because we can't change our genetics, but we
Mhm.
can help change our epigenetics and work on those things. So I think everyone should have at least one estrogen, one urinary metabolite like test just to be like, I mean, I got mine back and that's when I really cut down on alcohol.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was yeah, sometimes you need to see it in writing, I
Yes,
think.
and doubled down because I would be like, "Yeah, I'll take my calcium D-glucarate," like, but now it's like every day in my mix, same with my I3C dim, same with glutathione. So I think that's why testing is important too, because
Mhm.
sometimes we can't get that motivation turned up on patients because like most of my patients are juggling family, a career, just, they're
Hard.
all over the place and they don't feel good. And I'm like, well, you have to feel good. And you can feel good.
Yeah, you
Like you can
can. You
feel
can get
good.
them in the right you can have bring the hormones back together and
Yeah.
feel good again. And I tell all my patients, I can see who's gonna get breast cancer on like a Dutch test or a hormone zoomer if they're going down that
Yeah.
the 3 pathways to detox estrogen, if they're going down that 4 pathway to what you don't want,
Heard. Yeah.
I can see it before they get it. It's
It,
helpful sometimes.
yeah. But I mean, it's scary, but at the same time, it's empowering that we can make a change. But really, women should be doing this in their 20s.
Oh, yeah. I agree. I wish I'd known
Yeah.
this in my 20s.
I know.
I wish I'd known.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Jen, what would you tell people if they've tried all the labs, the hormone replacement therapy? They've done all the testing, all the peptides, all the supplements, and they still feel broken. What kind of maybe critical hormone signal is being missed, or where can they turn to? What advice would you give them?
I it goes back to the autonomic nervous system. So they need to double down on limbic system. They need to double down on parasympathetic activation. And these are the basics that they're not fun and exciting. And it actually sucks to like continuously bring it up to patients. Oh, I have this one patient that like I almost cried when I got off the call with her. And I had seen her for it's probably about going on for 4 years, 4 or 5 years. And she had Graves and Hashimoto. She would swing back and forth, got her in remission, super type A personality, and also
Mm,
has some trauma. I had been bringing up EMDR and trauma work to her since day one and would just keep bringing it up. And her Graves flared again, and
mm,
I think it has to do with glyphosate too,
mm.
being Northwest Ohio, but stress too. So finally, she quit her extra job she had, and she said, I called someone about EMDR, and I like about cried. I'm like,
Mhm.
this is like the key, and
Yeah.
it's not the fun thing to do. And I also think having a spiritual life, like for me, like
Mm.
just Jesus is my calm and really helps me. So also talking to patients about that, like where do they find their true peace? Because
Yes.
we can have perfect health but not peace.
Yeah.
And then it's not perfect health. But I see this a lot in the world that we're in the biohacking health world. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think peace is what a lot of people are missing too. And then that goes back to nervous system regulation. If you're not at peace, then your body's freaking out. You're just not going to get there.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's
Mm.
the one tenet I talk about every time too, and it's ugly work. It's not pretty sometimes, and no one wants to think that it's the nervous system, the brain that's causing some of the
Right.
risk. But it really, I agree with you completely. So this has been a great interview. Thank you for coming.
Thank
And
you.
where can people hear more from you? Where can they grab this amazing perimenopause reset book that I need up on my shelves here? So
Yeah.
yeah, where can they get more of your information?
Only if you put it next to our. No, just kidding.
Yeah, your wish is my command.
No, Dr. Jess has some good books over there. So, yes, people can find me. I'm on Instagram and YouTube at Integrative Dr. Mom. And sometimes, you can learn about my mini farm, which has been very good for my nervous system. And well, unless they die, but the animals, that's hard, but it's part of farm life. My book is at Dr. Jen Book. It's just DRJEN book, and some freebies with the book and everything, and just a lot of good stories of patients in there, and people can get better. I mean, I think that's the hope in perimenopause is women feel so lost, dysregulated, and not like themselves. So just getting them back to this midlife to just thrive and feel really good. It's just my mission. So,
Very
but thank you.
rewarding.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for coming, and I'm sure everyone enjoyed it. So thanks, Dr. Jen.
Thanks.
If this episode spoke to you, subscribe and share it with someone who can't find answers to what ails them. Please consider leaving a review. It helps others find our podcast. And download the Wellness Care Plan I've made for you for free on my site, wellnessplus.com.